In the last video, we looked at the parameters of air reverb, and I showed you how to put it directly on a track and use the mix knob to blend the wet and dry sound together. Now that's not actually how I usually use reverb in Pro Tools. I do something a little bit different, and I'm going to show that to you right now. So I'm going to go to the track menu, and I'm going to choose New. And here we have the new track dialog box, and I'm going to choose Stereo Aux Input. And then I'm going to call this track Reverb. And there it is. So I'm going to take the reverb plugin off the saxophone track. And the way I did that was to click the little dot next to the plugin and choose No Insert. And then I'm going to put the reverb plugin on the aux input track. Well, while I'm at it, I'm going to slide this over on the other side of my master fader. Not strictly necessary, but I like to keep things organized. Now I'm going to go to my sends, and I'm going to click on Send A, and I'm going to go down to Track, and I'm going to choose to send this track to the reverb track. And there's the send. This send fader pops up, and now what I can do is I can blend the saxophone dry track through this wet track to get like a good blend, and I'm going to use the send fader to do that. Listen. We can get real extreme. Sounds pretty terrible. But what this is doing now is this is sending a copy of the saxophone track through this track and through this plugin, because that's what's on the track. This fader controls basically the volume level of the signal I'm sending. So if it's all the way down, it's not sending anything, and you won't see anything on the meter here. But if I bump it up, you'll see a little bit. And you hear the reverb. I do a little more. And a little bit goes a long way. It doesn't have to like fill up the meter. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this send across to the other tracks, and I'm going to do that with Option Drag. I'm going to skip the piano track for now. I'm just holding down the Option key while I drag. There we go. And then I'll put the piano on separately. It's the only stereo track, and so that affects this. Okay. And now I could look at these send faders one at a time. I don't want to do that. I want to look at them all at once. So I'm going to press the Command key and click on this arrow. And this opens up the expanded sends view. And now I can see like a little mixer within the mixer for my send. So I'll keep soloing the saxophone for right now, and I'll solo some other instruments, but let's check it out. Now that saxophone part has some depth. Let's listen to the piano part. And the bass, let's talk about the bass. The bass is a low frequency instrument, just like the kick. Reverb doesn't work quite as well down in that range. Maybe a little bit, but sometimes I just don't put any reverb or any delay or any time-based effects on those low-end tracks at all. It just sort of fills up the space with low frequency in an unnecessary way. It's going to make the whole mix sound muddy. By the way, I am mixing this one track at a time. That's not the way you do it. I'm just doing this to show you in this tutorial video so that you can hear the reverb clearly. Here's the snare. All right. And the overheads. If you put reverb on the snare and the overheads, that might be all you need for the whole drum kit. If this were a stereo track, it'd be even easier. Just gives a little added depth to the drum kit there. And then, of course, we need to go through and adjust the settings on the reverb plugin to make it just how we want. And we also have the added capability of raising or lowering the volume of the reverb track. So this is how you implement reverb typically in Pro Tools. Most people do it this way. And there are some benefits to this. This is easier on your computer processing power. Time-based plugins like reverb and delay use a lot of computer power. And so if your computer doesn't have like a bunch of RAM, you know, it might slow down, your session could crash, bad things could happen, it'll sound weird. It also allows us to put all of the instruments together into the same sort of sonic space, right? This is jazz, it's an acoustic genre, and it should sound like all the players are together. In fact, they were together in the recording. You can hear that from the bleed. So if we put different reverb plugins or different reverb settings on each track individually, it would be harder to make it sound like they were in the same space. And the key here is just to, not overdo it. Go ahead and experiment with it. Overdo it to learn, and then pull back and give your track a tasteful amount of reverb. And this is going to add to your mix and give you that depth in addition to the volume controls. You'll have like a 3-dimensional mix.